So, this video has been one I've been trying to wrap my head around for about 6 months now, maybe even 7, I think. It's had many iterations: racism and xenophobia surrounding the Godzilla franchise, Godzilla vs. Kong, bad critiques, Godzilla vs. American critics. But I think this idea is what best suits the topic. Godzilla versus bad faith criticism. Xenophobia and racism flavor the criticisms surrounding Godzilla for most professional critics, especially here in America, where Godzilla was either a drive-in monster thriller or a severely cut-down film that was played for laughs while John Belushi made fun of it. Thanks, Saturday Night Live. This has led to people who don't take their time to research the film winding up falling into the same pitfalls as each other, usually calling the films cheap or a ripoff of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. This is the first of what I call unfair criticisms. Because if you take any movies in certain genres and break them down to one sentence, they all sound like the same movie or rip-offs of each other. So much so that there's several TikTok accounts, rest in peace TikTok, that have a running joke of poorly describing movies and they all sound like different movies. This is something that in my eyes makes it a fundamental flaw in any criticism that's supposed to be taken seriously. Even the late Roger Ebert wasn't immune to this. I know nowadays there's a divided opinion about the man's reviews, but up until the early 2010s, people held this man in high regards. If I had to describe Ebert's reviews, I would call them outdated opinions from a man who has no consideration for any non-Hollywood film. For example, he states in his review of Godzilla 1954, "In these days of flawless special effects, Godzilla and the city he destroys are equally crude. Godzilla at times looks uncannily like a man in a lizard suit stomping around on cardboard sets, as indeed he was and did. Other scenes show him as a stuffed, awkward animatronic model. This was not state of the art even at the time. King Kong 1933 was much more convincing." Now, I have shown this movie to several friends who had never seen a Godzilla film before, and they were always blown away by how good the destruction was, and how good the suit looks in motion. Save for the hand puppet, that always gets a few laughs out of them. And calling 2005-ish special effects flawless is pretty wild. For those of you that don't know, each of the miniatures in Godzilla were built in a mostly correct semblance of, at the time, Japanese building code to give them a realistic crumble when they get destroyed. And I really don't know about you, but I'm a little more inclined to believe that this, the footage you can see playing here of Godzilla moving around, is a lot more realistic looking than, say, this from 1933's King Kong, which is a movie that uses a stop-motion version of the monkey to be able to portray the monster. And I know it's dated at the time, but it feels a little unfair to call Godzilla out for that and not be able to call Kong out for the same thing. Anyways, though he is no longer with us, the kind of bad faith criticisms that he put out there still persist. People calling Godzilla a ripoff of other movies or calling them movies for children. You know, that kind of thing. Which I'll admit that the Showa era, from Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster all the way to Godzilla vs. Megalon, were absolutely marketed and directed for kids. However, starting with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, they started winding back and being a lot less kid-focused. I'm sure you've heard at least 3 or 4 other YouTube channels go over the Dr. Skipper controversy and his opinions on how Godzilla doesn't work in America. So instead of bringing him up, I think I'd like to focus on another thing that happened, specifically one surrounding a creator who covers a very specific media source that comes from Japan. Lockstin from Gnoggin. I know this is fairly old at this point, but he has done a video on both Baxcalibur and Tyranitar, two Pokemon notoriously related to Godzilla or considered a Godzilla lookalike. Let's start with the Tyranitar video. Now, big props to them for giving due credit to the inspiration of Pokemon to Ultraman, and there seems to be a lot of respect in the way they talk about Ultraman. This to me is a clear indicator that they are at least familiar with tokusatsu as a whole. They show a lot of research being done by naming the origins for certain Pokemon and talking about tokusatsu and really going into depth with what they are talking about. This is incredibly frustrating because if we go over to the video on Baxcalibur, you'll find that they have mostly correct information about Godzilla and a mostly respectful covering of Godzilla's history. I know that sounds kind of contradictory to what I said previously about it being frustrated, but this is because the video was absolutely edited to exclude the information they had included that caused an uproar. The initial video stated that Godzilla had evolved from a mutated marine iguana
and caused a marine iguana to mutate, harness the power of nuclear energy, and grow massive.
This is only true for the 1998 Roland Emmerich Godzilla movie. They had also stated Godzilla only recently got back to being serious with the release of Godzilla -1.
And the same thing happened to Godzilla. Sure, it invented a genre, but that genre kinda got silly. Like, oh, Godzilla, he's fighting an ape now. He's helping other humans fight other monsters. He's flying like this somehow. It just got more and more ridiculous, to the point where the Kaiju genre was seen as a thing for kids, more so than for adults. I mean, think about the Ultramans and the Power Rangers and all that. It wasn't until Godzilla -1, nearly 70 years later, that the Godzilla franchise got back to its roots as not only a powerful and emotional metaphor, but also as being award-winningly good.
This shows a severe lack of research because Godzilla has had the Mechagodzilla movies, the Heisei movies, 2014's Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, and Godzilla Planet of the Monsters. Godzilla had returned to series multiple times since late 60s, early 70s movies. I will give props to Gnoggin for editing these errors out of their video, and I send no hate their way. You guys do wonderful work over there covering Pokemon, and I lost a lot of respect with that slapdash research. But you admitted that you were wrong, whether directly or indirectly, and edited the video to remove that information. So thank you. Now, on to something that had irritated me to the degree that I did the one thing any true content creator can do to right an injustice. I tweeted about it. This is an article from Life magazine. It's the story and history of Godzilla. Not even one paragraph in, I gave up in the magazine, and I hit my call-out post on Twitter.com. The person who wrote the article calls Godzilla a ripoff of the beast from 20,000 Fathoms, as you might remember from the beginning of this video. This is yet another perpetuation of this rumor. It's frustrating to try and defend Godzilla when major news media outlets barely do any research on the one thing that they are doing a large-scale story about. The only way we can really deal with this is to thoroughly research your topics. Don't just go around repeating what other people have said, because this is how opinions get conflated as fact. And that's where I was going to end this video. But I had a friend reach over this script, and she had one question that I didn't know how to answer while staying true to the theme of this video. She read over the script and she asked me, how is Godzilla supposed to be viewed then? And I tried to think of an answer, and I couldn't really think of an answer because there's no real right way to view Godzilla until I heard a quote, and it brought me to the conclusion of feel how you want about Godzilla. You can love him, you can hate him, hell, you can dismiss versions of him as a children's superhero. Godzilla has been a superhero, a destroyer, a pained god, an ancient guardian, a plague, 2 million ghosts in a Godzilla-shaped trench coat. You know, it doesn't matter what you think of Godzilla, but what does matter is the respect and thoughtfulness we give the tokusatsu genre. Whether it be Godzilla, Power Rangers, Ultraman, or even Zone Fighter, there is so much love, talent, and integrity that goes into telling these stories and shaping these characters. The effects that they use may not be comparable to Hollywood movies at times, especially for the time that the older movies are made. And you're certainly not going to see a lot of CGI in any of these movies pre-2005. Most everything they do is in camera. And okay, let me put it to you like this, from a quote that's in a book about Eiji Tsuburaya, right? He's the guy behind most of the special effects in a lot of the older Toho movies and the Ultraman series. In the book Eiji Tsuburaya, Master of Monsters, he talks about an actress and an actor from Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. Shiro Sano had a copy of Godzilla vs. King Kong that he had invited a younger cast member as well as Shiharu Niyama to watch the movie with him. Niyama was said to have only tagged along because she found their excitement funny. However, when she began to laugh at a miniature set of a dig site that would be used to try to capture Godzilla in the movie, Sano stopped her and said, "Don't laugh. It would have been easier and cheaper for Tsuburaya to have gone to a construction site and filmed ordinary trucks lugging it than to have built a sprawling miniature like this. Realism is not the point. It's about style. It's about mood. There's integrity in the way Tsuburaya and his people work. And that's the point of this video. Godzilla was never about state-of-the-art graphics engines, hyper-defined CGI, or even realistic water sims. While it's so cool to have all of that in the MonsterVerse, Godzilla is a franchise that has thrived, survived, and won because of spectacle and the stories these movies tell. So think what you want about Godzilla. All I ask is that you give him a try without expecting it to be, some massive Hollywood blockbuster. Who knows? You might watch a lizard body slam a dragonfly and it could be your favorite movie. And with that, I gotta say, feel free to discuss everything in the comments and let me know your thoughts. I am genuinely curious on what you think of Godzilla and if this video has helped you maybe view Godzilla a bit differently if you didn't like him before. Oh, and before I forget, use the sponsor link in the description with code Kaiju to get 15% off your order with Candle Company candles. Soaps, incense, wax melts, so much more. The more you buy, the more it helps this Kaiju girly put more stuff out. And you can get my exclusive scent with them, Kaiju Grippers. It is a mix of a sea salt blossom as well as a bonfire, meant to kind of represent the smell of a kaiju coming ashore. All right, I'll see you later, Busters. Bye-bye.